Hello everyone and welcome back to the next installment of our 9.2 raid guides, proudly presented by Coinbase. This is Crazy Puck from Team Liquid, and today we'll show you how to kill Skolex in the Heroic Sepulcher of the first ones. Skolex is a single phase fight against a giant, mostly stationary worm. He can't move on his own, except for one ability cast we'll discuss later. There's constant ticking damage on the raid during this fight, thanks to a debuff called Ephemera Dust. This is a permanent stacking dot applied by two other mechanics. Dust Flail is a raid-wide AoE ability, dealing mild damage and applying one stack of dust to everybody in the raid. Dust Blast is a targeted ability at the three furthest players from the boss, dealing splash damage within 10 yards of the target and applying a stack of dust to anybody hit, including those targets. The boss also has a few other abilities that will not create stacks of dust on the raid. Wretch is a large conal ability targeted at a random player in the raid. Get out of the animation, or your raid leader is probably going to be sad. Anybody hit will take moderate damage, get a dot, and be disoriented. Devouring Blood will put a bunch of blue swirlies on the ground in melee range that explode shortly after appearing. Anyone hit will take moderate damage and get an 18-second debuff, dealing ticking damage and reducing haste by 20%. There's also a tank dance in this fight, with two abilities, Rend and Riftmaw. Rend is a frontal cone at the tank, dealing heavy physical damage and applying a bleed. Riftmaw is a frontal shadow damage cone at the tank that also increases damage taken by subsequent Riftmaws by 500% for 4 seconds. The boss will cast 3 total abilities as part of this dance, with the order being completely random. Your tanks must swap for Riftmaw, as you cannot survive being hit by 2 of them. You can survive being hit by 2 Rends though. Since both attacks are frontal cone abilities, the tanks should stand a few yards apart from each other to make sure you don't accidentally get hit by both. The other mechanic the tanks need to worry about is Wormhole Jaws, causing the boss's melee attacks to always hit the next closest target. If there is no other player within 10 yards of the tank, that tank will instead take double damage from each melee swing. As a note, the cleave aspect of Wormhole Jaws can and will hit melee players if they are closer to the tank than the secondary tank is. So, your tanks need to make sure that they stay relatively close to each other. Okay, so let's talk about these Ephemera Dust stacks. Earlier, we said they're permanent. We also said the boss cannot move on his own. Both of these have an exception. It's called a Ravening Burrow. If the entire raid is grouped up together away from the boss, it'll trigger Skolex to cast Ravening Burrow. This will put a circle on the ground where the raid is stacked, and the boss will burrow underground and then shoot out into that circle. Anybody hit will take mild damage and be knocked back, but will also have their stacks of dust cleared. So, as your raid's stacks of Ephemera Dust start getting high, you'll want to all stack up and force a Ravening Burrow. Make sure everybody gets hit so all of the stacks are reset. A couple notes about the burrow. First off, as the boss starts casting Ravening Burrow, there will be another circle directly underneath where the boss currently is. When he goes underground, anyone within that circle will die, so make sure you're nowhere near it. Additionally, after each burrow completes, the boss will gain a stack of Insatiable, increasing his damage by 10% per stack. Lastly, if the boss does not hit anybody in the raid with Ravening Burrow, he'll get very angry and deal massive damage to the entire raid and apply 10 stacks of Ephemera Dust to everybody. This shouldn't ever really happen unless most of the raid is dying and you're already wiping. It's mostly just to prevent you from causing non-stop burrows going around the room. Strategy wise, we recommend using Bloodlust on pull. The range should stack about 10 or 15 yards behind the melee group. Mark one ranged player as your leader, and this will be their stack point. You'll also want to mark a melee player so they can be stacked up together to help with the swirlies. You'll want to assign 2 groups of 3 ranged players to alternate being the Dust Blast targets. These players will move behind the group to make sure they're a little bit further away than the rest of the ranged. You'll want to alternate which group is soaking the Dust Blasts after each Wretch. When the boss casts Wretch, the whole raid will shift sideways in a predetermined direction so you don't get hit. Go the same direction for every Wretch. The tanks will need to ensure handling the Rend Riftmaw dance properly. Do not get hit by 2 Riftmaws or you will die. Make sure to move out of the swirlies from Devouring Blood. After every second retch, your raid leader should call for everybody to stack in ranged on the marked player. Every person in your raid must get to that marked player as quickly as possible, forcing a ravening burrow. Your tanks should be the last 2 players walking into that, because the boss will still keep meleeing while you're grouping up. If anyone is too close to the primary tank, they'll likely end up dying. So, just have the tanks run in last to keep everybody else in the raid safe. Ensure everyone stays within the targeting circle for Burrow, especially Dust Blast targets, so your stacks get reset. You can plan where you get knocked back from this based on your positioning relative to the center of the soak circle. Ranged should all try to get knocked back together, so when you land you're already grouped up. From here, it's the same fight, just a new area of the room. Ranged should stack up about 10 or 15 yards away from the boss. Make sure you're a bit away from the edge of the room, giving your Dust Blast soakers somewhere to go. You'll rotate again when the retch casts, and cause a burrow after the second retch again. If you enjoyed this guide, remember to like it and make sure you're subscribed to the channel to catch all of our previews, guides, kill videos, and more. A big thank you to Coinbase for making guides like these possible. From everyone here at Team Liquid, have a great day, and we'll see you for the next video.